Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Lynn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good morning. Welcome to Ethical Perspectives in the News. My name is Pete Welch, and I'm the moderator for your show today. One of the topics that piqued my interest that we would like to talk about, and that's today, it's the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Having lived in Japan for a number of years, I thought that this would be an interesting topic, and I didn't know anything about it, and I picked it as today's topic, and then we're going to discuss it with you. First of all, this morning, we've got Todd Wiley, who's a farmer here in Iowa. Good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
And next with us this morning is Ellen Fisher, who's a member of the Sierra Club. Good morning.
Good morning.
And finally, we have Ken Sagar, who is the president of the Iowa Federation of Labor.
Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, thank you for joining me this morning.
Good to be here.
TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership. Would anybody care to talk what you have found out about it, or what it means to you? And then later on, we'll develop the topic and see what it could affect for our viewers today and Iowans. Anybody care to start off?
I'm happy to take a stab at it. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is a trade agreement, probably one of the biggest trade agreements most people know absolutely nothing about. It's been fundamentally negotiated in private between 12 countries on the Pacific Rim, North and South America, Asia. The idea, it appears to us to be to open up opportunities for corporation to maximize profits. We look at it as more of a corporate entitlement program than a trade agreement.
In fact, large portions of that agreement do not have to do with trade. They have to do with other issues. So at least in terms of what you might first think of as trade as tariffs and access to markets is a small portion of that treaty. It has a great deal to do with ability of governments to regulate, power balances between corporations and governments, and maximizing corporate profits. So there are other pieces to it, like it will have a dramatic impact on access to affordable medicines. People might not think of that as being likely to be part of a Trans-Pacific trade agreement.
Okay, now our viewers today they probably have heard of this thing called NAFTA.
Right.
Okay, and that was Canada, Mexico, U.S., and some others. But now Pacific Rim, do we have a sense on the countries and their makeup? I mean, they all border on the Pacific.
Yes.
And it's not Canada, and it's not Mexico, it's only the United States. And then the other 11?
Principally our countries in the Far East. I believe Chile's involved in that too.
Chile.
To say that Canada and Mexico aren't going to be impacted by that's not actually accurate, because NAFTA will be impacted by the rules under the TPP. There are a lot of things. Buy American. I mean, most people in your viewing area, I'm sure most people in this country, like the idea of buying products that are created, services that are created in this country, and feel some, patriotism or sense of loyalty. But Buy American, this trade deal could take the American right out of the Buy American thing, and that's disturbing to me.
Pete, I want to get back to your original question, and they alluded to their interpretation. But as a farmer, as a pork producer, we see a lot, or we at least see some opportunity in terms of trade. Now, I'm not well versed in the other political aspects of the agreement, but from a pork producer standpoint, we think it is a good opportunity to increase trade and to increase value for our products.
Now, one of the things I found out was that obviously the United States is the big gorilla in this. The second big gorilla is Japan. And one of the things that I can personally say to you is that when I lived in Tokyo, if you attempted to order a glass of orange juice, Florida orange juice, it was going to cost you $40 or $50 because the Japanese have very strong tariffs on agricultural products to protect their own industry. And something coming that would be pork or meat or a farm product, they would tariff it very highly. and we would correspond to their tariffs because we would protect our 3 Detroit automakers because we felt that Honda and Toyota were dumping cars below cost. So there's a lot of this going on in trade, and done this by governments, isn't it?
Correct. But I would say from an agricultural standpoint, the 20 free trade agreements that we have within pork production, we export more pork to those 20 countries than we do any other place of the world combined. So we see it as a great opportunity. And I'm not saying that it's perfect, and I'm not saying it's not without its issues, but we do believe that from an agricultural, especially from a meat perspective, that actually provides jobs and economic stimulus to our economy, especially in Iowa.
I think the part of it that is probably least familiar to the American public and most consequential are the investor-state dispute settlement provisions. Those are provisions that started in NAFTA but have been included in every trade treaty since. They were originally created to protect investors from appropriation of their assets by foreign countries, like naturalizing fuel or extractive industries. However, they are much broader than that, and they are the provisions that protect corporate profits. So under the investor-state dispute settlement provisions, multinational corporations can sue any local, state, or national government for the adoption of any legislation, policy, or provision that they believe, that they assert will reduce their future profits. That means that it becomes difficult for national governments or state governments to protect environmental protections, to protect public health laws, to protect labor laws, to protect access to affordable medicines. It is an immensely broad shift in the power between governments and corporations. And it inverts what has traditionally been the relationship that governments get to control what happens within their borders. The rules for the investor-state dispute settlement provisions trump sovereignty. So many people will be aware of the fact that right now, TransCanada has announced that it will sue the United States for $15 billion because the Keystone XL pipeline was canceled. And Eli Lilly is suing Canada because Canada adopted some patent provisions for medicines that invalidated some patents that Eli Lilly holds. So they're suing Canada for $500 million. And the investor-state dispute settlement provisions, because the TPP covers so broad an area, will double the number of corporations that can sue the U.S. for unlimited amounts of taxpayer dollars. It will double it from 9,000 to 18,000 corporations that can sue for any regulation that they assert will reduce their future profits. It's an immense problem, and it will impact Iowans.
It's almost anti-democratic if you think about it, because we have the ability, whether it's Todd as a county supervisor that we can elect, or Senator Grassley or anybody else, we are able to direct what we do in this country. What this treaty is fundamentally doing is giving the rights of self-determination away so that corporations have more rights, or at least equal rights, to what governments have. And I don't think that was really what our founding fathers intended.
How is it possible that an agreement of this type, the TPP, gets even negotiated when it can have these impacts, and yet none of the citizens of the country really know what it is? I mean, how does that go on?
It was done in secrecy, to be honest. Even our members of Congress had to sign non-disclosure agreements to go in and look at the documents. They could not take recording devices, they couldn't take pens, they couldn't take paper.
And they couldn't tell their constituents what was in it. And the Office of U.S. Trade Representative had actually mentioned unguardedly to a news outlet that the reason it was being kept secret, and President Obama kept it more secret than President Bush kept his trade agreements because Obama classified the information, is being kept secret because they thought they couldn't pass it if the public knew what was in it.
Food for thought.
Food for thought, but it makes one wonder, you know, how you can act, Mr. Obama or any president, with such a bottom line. I mean, that makes for some very strange partners for Obama. That means that a lot of Republicans in business and pharma are on the side of the fence with Obama, and that would take the core of the Democratic Party and put them on the other side.
Agreed.
Interesting.
It makes for strange bedfellows.
It certainly does. I mean, our concern all along has been the jobs thing. And, you know, it's pretty hard to get the crystal ball out and look that, you know, this or that's going to create jobs. But one of the best ways to look and see what's the likely impact is going to be is by looking backwards. And if we look and see what's happened with NAFTA, if we look and see what's happened with the permanent normalization of trade with China, with the Korean trade deal with CAFTA, you know, the Trade Adjustment Assistance Act, which was passed to help workers, this is just Iowa. There's more than 23,000 Iowa jobs have been certified by the TAA, the Trade Adjustment Authority, to have been offshored since the implementation of NAFTA. That's a lot of workers, and I know that's a lot of statistics, but for you folks in your viewing area, that was 900 jobs at Goss that are now went to Mexico. Square D's, 450 jobs to Mexico. Midland Ford, you know, 125 jobs to Mexico. Predigar up in Manchester, 80 jobs. Cedar Rapids, Inc., another 400 jobs to Mexico. Those are jobs that create family-sustaining opportunities. Those are good jobs with good benefits, and they're gone. Now, we've lost a lot of jobs with the trade agreements that we've got. There is no expectation that this new system, this new agreement, this TPP, is going to give us anything to return any of these jobs or to prevent any future jobs from going away.
Okay.
In contrast to that, representing agriculture, the American Farm Bureau Federation believes that just in Iowa alone, it'll generate close to 3,000 jobs. And that's mostly in the production of pork and beef. And so I think there's always an offset. It's unfortunate, obviously, that those jobs aren't here, but in an economy that's in a transitioning phase, I think that there are opportunities to replace those jobs with free trade agreements.
Well, I certainly hope so. I mean, you know, we're talking, you know, 23,000 jobs for 3,000. I'm not sure. My idea of a trade agreement isn't us trading our jobs for cheap stuff from overseas, or to give away the rights for patents for drugs, because that's going to be a big thing. Seniors are going to suffer under this. We're not going to have the same rights that they have now. It's going to impact our ability to govern, literally govern our country, because of the anti-democratic things that are in there that allow corporations to fundamentally have the same standing as our government. And like I said earlier, I don't think that's what the Founding Fathers intended.
And part of what you're talking about is if somebody were to have a minimum wage job now, be it whatever that minimum wage is, you know, Johnson County has its in other spots of Iowa, but it's $7.25 or better.
Right.
And some of the countries that are on this, like Brunei, Indonesia, Vietnam, they have significantly less per hour wage. So the corporation sitting there says, why am I paying, you know, minimum wage in the United States when I could take that job to Vietnam and improve the profitability by the $4 per hour less wage they have to pay the workers there? So that's the point you're making, isn't it?
Well, right now we've got an issue in this country with the inequality in the distribution of income and wealth. This is not going to improve that in any way, shape, or form. And when you talk about minimum wage, given the fact that what if a corporation in another country decides that the United States passed the minimum wage of $7.25 is impeding my ability to make a profit, and they sue the country because our minimum wage is too high? It's not too high. It's not even a living wage. It's not even close. But what if a corporation overseas does that? Because of the perceived notion that their profits will be diminished or impacted in some negative way.
I think it's worth looking at the drug issue because the TPP specifically increases monopoly pricing for drugs. It requires every country that is a participant in the TPP to grant 20-year extensions of patents for slight changes in the formula of drugs, even if there is no evidence that it improves the effectiveness of the drug. And it requires extensions of new 20-year patents for new uses of old drugs. And if we have been taught that the reason for a patent is to protect the costs of innovation in producing the product, so if you've already recouped the cost of your developing of the drug in the first 20 years of your patent, then you presumably don't need monopoly pricing for another 20 years because you decided there was some new way you could make use of that drug.
Okay, but the businessman is going to sit there and say, I'm going to tweak that and change that just a minor amount and then get another 20 years.
Exactly, and it permits absolutely perpetually evergreening of patents. The availability of generic drugs, once those became available in the United States, have saved consumers and government programs billions of dollars a year. The drug companies regard that as a loss. They are doing everything in their power to recoup what has been savings for the rest of us and put that back into their profits. So the drug provisions of the TPP have been the provisions that have been most intensely fought in the negotiations, because other countries do not want to make drugs unaffordable to their population. But this will affect seniors in Iowa. One of the serious problems is that people are suggesting that it will make that the rules that are in an annex to the TPP are likely to make it impossible for our government to ever renegotiate the idea of the government using its purchasing power to renegotiate drug prices for Medicare D. There was a huge gift to the pharmaceutical industry when Medicare D was adopted that prohibited the government from negotiating drug prices, unlike the VA, which still is able to do that. There are provisions in the TPP that will make it specifically less likely for our government to ever be able to do that. The language in an annex to the intellectual property rights section specifically says that it applies to the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services in its determinations of federal coverage.
Is there anything from, like the people that you represent and the Sierra, is there anything about trying to drag these negotiations out into the public so that these things can be made?
It's too late. It's too late.
The negotiations is over.
Because when Fast Track was approved last year, one of the provisions of Fast Track is that the agreement cannot be amended. It's too late to make any changes.
You vote it up or you vote it down. That's the choice.
Furthermore, the administration was saying very publicly, we need to pass Fast Track, and it puts all of the negotiating power in the hands of Congress, because as part of that bill, Congress gets to specify what the priorities are for the trade agreement. So among those priorities, when Fast Track passed, in the environmental section, it required language that has been in the last 4 trade treaties, and that was language that was negotiated in May 10th of 2007 with the Bush administration. And it required that all trade treaties for the U.S. had to include language that required the countries to adopt, maintain, and implement their obligations under 7 multilateral environment agreements. That's part of the Fast Track bill that passed in 2015. And in fact, the TPP includes only one of those 7. So the treaty does not fulfill the requirements of the Fast Track law. But there is also no possibility of changing the treaty because that's part of the Fast Track law. It cannot be amended. It can only be voted up or down, and it only needs 51 votes to pass the Senate, not the usual 67.
So the only reviewing is going to be Congress?
The only
it's
choice,
all or nothing? Is that your understanding, Ken?
Well, yeah, the president could veto it, but it's highly unlikely since it's his trade bill, okay? And his people negotiated it in conjunction with a host of corporate lobbyists. We didn't have a seat at the table. I'm pretty sure the Sierra Club didn't have a seat at the table. And,
Todd,
I'm not sure.
Did you have a seat at the table?
I wasn't there, but agriculture was clearly represented.
Agriculture was
Yes.
represented, but you know who wasn't represented? We the people. We didn't have congressmen sitting there. We didn't have senators sitting there. They were precluded from the process. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. If this is such a good deal, why wasn't it negotiated out in public so that we could see if it was a good deal?
It seems to me if it can't stand the light of day, it's not always a good deal for everyone. I'm sorry.
Well, unfortunately, there may be some shortcomings clearly from what you folks have said, but in terms of free trade agreements in general, we have been at a trade imbalance for some time, and I think that this is an opportunity to help that out. We're much better off in exporting meat than we are in exporting corn and soybean meal, and quite frankly, the benefits of utilizing corn and soybean meal and products within the United States to create a healthy, wholesome meat product, whether it be beef or pork, either one, still is included in the trade agreement, and we think that it's a nice benefit.
I know from doing some research on this, the National Farmers Union is not quite as enamored with the trade agreement and some of the aspects of it as some of the other agricultural groups, and they're the only ones I really have any.
And that wouldn't be all that
interaction with.
unusual, frankly. Yeah.
One other piece of this that hasn't been mentioned yet is that the investor state dispute settlement provisions, which are the ones that I've been most upset about, they are actually expanded in this treaty to cover banks and financial services that have not been covered by ISDS agreements in the past. And if this treaty passes, it will make it extremely difficult to regulate our banking industry. And for any Iowan who is harmed by the 2008 crash and the resulting Great Recession needs to be concerned about passing a treaty that will make it difficult to regulate our banking industry. One of the provisions of this treaty is that no country that is a party to it can exclude a new financial instrument, like a complex derivative, if it isn't permitted in any other country in the agreement. This is covering 11 countries.
See, part of the problem is there's nothing to address currency manipulation. We've had a problem with China. We owe them a lot of money right now. We've had a problem with them because they continue to manipulate their currency. That is not addressed here. China's not in the agreement, by the way. I want to be clear on that.
And that is the other point is their economy rivals or is close to the United States. They didn't get included in this because the United States appears wanting to try and dominate this issue without having another major.
But if we set this system up with no coverage to address the currency manipulation issue, and then China gets into it, how do we control that? Well, the bottom line is we don't. And then we just continue to have the issue of them manipulating their currency, which affects our trade deficits and the cost of our goods over there and the cost of their goods here. As I said earlier, a trade deal isn't about us trading our good jobs for cheap stuff from overseas.
For whether you're in agriculture or the Sierra Club or with labor, what do we say to our viewers that are watching us this morning? Is it something where we should talk to get in touch with our congressmen and senators and say, get informed?
I think that's the first answer is be well versed in the bill in its entirety, because there are parts of it that I am not, and obviously you folks are. However, I do see the benefits and the value to it.
I was just going to say, labor's not opposed to trade. We're opposed to free trade because it's really not free. We'd like to see some fair trade for a change. We've seen trade deal after trade deal come down the road with promises that we're going to see all these, apple pie and motherhood and, all that stuff, right? And what we've seen is the loss of thousands upon thousands of factories. Millions of jobs have gone away as a result of these trade deals. These have not been a good deal for people in this country, for people in Mexico. The Canadians aren't big fans of it either. The reality is the trade deals are really good for corporations. But if you went through that list of folks and looked around here in the metro area for people who used to work for Goss and say, did you have a good job then? Well, yeah, they had a good job. Did you get another good job? That's the problem, is we're trading really good jobs for not so good jobs that don't have benefits, that don't have pensions, that don't have the opportunities for advancement. We're all in favor of trade, but can we have some fair trade for a change?
And it wasn't just, you're not just talking W-2 income, you're talking benefits, which means a health coverage and a wealth
all
of
the
other
things
things.
that give you the opportunity to live the American dream.
Yeah.
And I think
Ellen?
that my request of viewers would be contact your members of Congress and ask them to vote no on this treaty. I think that the bad parts of it are so severely bad that it is not redeemable, and that while I agree that it is good to have trade and support agricultural exports, I think it can't be done through this particular treaty, that it should be scrapped and we should start over.
And one of our missions in this TV program is we try and get people to turn over their brain matter on these issues. And of course, anybody that's interested further, I think the Sierra Club probably has got on their website
Yes.
positions and things.
Right.
AFL-CIO does too.
AFL-CIO does. And the Farmers Organization, same way, on why, so that our listeners this morning that want to look further on this topic could look that way, or just even Google.
Yeah,
I would definitely advise people to get more informed about this, because this has been underway under the wraps, so to speak, of secrecy for corporate interest to negotiate the best deal they can for corporate interests. What we need to do is, as Ellen says, is to make sure that, let's start over, let's do this out in the light of day, and let's make sure that we don't just address Todd's issues, but there's a lot of people out there who are going to be impacted by this. Seniors in Iowa, workers in Iowa. Let's make a deal for everybody in Iowa and across this country.
Okay, we're down to just about a minute and a half on the program. Any final quick thought?
I would echo what Ellen said. Call your senator and ask them to vote no. Call your congressman, ask them to vote no.
The key
we
for
can
you
do
is
better
the
than
key
this.
for you is fair, right?
Fair is good, and right now we don't see the fairness.
Ellen, any final comment?
I think that it is crucial that we protect democracy as opposed to the investor-state dispute settlements in our trade treaties.
Todd?
Well, I would go one step further of just calling your congressman and telling them to vote no. I would ask them to become well-educated and become well-educated as a voter. But here again, there are opportunities within this as a free trade agreement. And it's not all bad. I think that there are things that are quite good that can be beneficial not only to the state of Iowa, but to the country.
And I think what you're doing is you're saying, get informed. Get informed as the citizen, get informed as the legislative personnel. You can call, you can write, you can email. That's our mission. Anyway,
Democracy is not a spectator sport.
No,
that's right.
Get
Anyway,
involved.
I'd like to thank you all for joining this morning. And you, our viewers, thank you very much for joining us, and let's go out and make our community a better place for everyone to live. Thank you.